It was a morning in May 2025 when Ibrahim Traoré received a phone call that would change everything. On the other end was a Fox News producer, nervous, direct, and unmistakably tense. President Traoré, Kash Patel wants to debate you live on Tucker Carlson tonight. He claims he can prove Africa doesn't need American aid. Ibrahim paused, holding the phone in his office at the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. Kash Patel, a former Trump aide turned high-profile political commentator, had built his fame on controversial foreign policy hot takes. When exactly is this debate? Ibrahim asked. Tonight, 8 p.m. Washington time. You'll join via satellite from Burkina Faso. Ibrahim allowed himself a small smile. At 35, he'd faced challenges far greater than a televised sparring match. I accept, but on one condition. I want 15 minutes to present our evidence before the debate begins. The producer hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. Sir, that's not standard protocol. Then there's no debate, Ibrahim said coolly. Very well. We accept your terms. As soon as the call ended, Ibrahim turned to his aide, Moussa Kabor. Get our latest reports ready. Tonight, we'll show the world what Burkina Faso really is. Moussa grinned. What's your plan, sir? A reality check that no one will ever forget. Thousands of miles away in Washington, Kash Patel was brimming with confidence. He'd pored over Africa's economic figures and was certain he could embarrass the young Burkinabe leader. He had no idea what was coming. Back at the palace, Ibrahim called an emergency meeting with his team. Ministers, advisors, and technicians crowded the room, prepping satellite links and presentation slides. Bring me all indicators from the last 3 years, he told Economy Minister Fatimata Sawadogo. GDP, employment, foreign investments, infrastructure, everything. Fatimata tapped away on her laptop. Mr. President, our data is strong. GDP growth averages 8.5% a year, unemployment down from 32% to 11%, and we've attracted $4.2 billion in Chinese and European investments. Foreign Minister Dr. Awa Drogo added cautiously, Kash Patel is notorious for playing dirty. He'll try to provoke you. Ibrahim nodded calmly. Let him try. We have facts on our side. Meanwhile, at the Fox studio, Kash Patel adjusted his tie, a smug grin on his face. The tall 44-year-old was known for his confrontational style and had promised producers he'd dismantle the African success story. This kid thinks he can wow Americans with made-up numbers, he sneered to his assistant. I'll show him he's just another African strongman in a fancy suit. Tucker Carlson reviewed the evening script, raising an eyebrow. Kash, sure you're ready for Traoré? He's no pushover. The man's a skilled speaker. Tucker, relax. I'll crush him live. Watch. Back in Africa, leaders across the continent were calling Ibrahim with messages of solidarity. The president of Senegal said, Brother, all of Africa stands behind you tonight. The president of Ghana added, Remind the world who we really are. Ibrahim remained unruffled. This is not about conflict. It's about dignity and truth. At 7 p.m. Ouagadougou time, the broadcast team rolled out the cameras. Ibrahim donned his sharp navy suit and adjusted his microphone. Ready, Mr. President? Asked the technician. More than ready, Ibrahim replied, his smile carrying an edge that few had seen before. At 8 p.m. Washington time, Tucker Carlson kicked off the segment with his trademark dramatic flair. Good evening. I'm Tucker Carlson. Tonight, a special debate. Kash Patel, former White House aide, faces off with Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. The question, does Africa really need American aid? The camera cut to Kash Patel in the studio, bristling with energy, eyes sharp. Tucker, it's simple. For decades, American aid has done nothing for Africa. Corrupt regimes squander billions while their people starve. Then the feed switched to Ouagadougou. Ibrahim appeared on screen, serene and composed in his polished office. Good evening, Tucker. Thank you for this platform. Kash pounced immediately. President Traoré, your country has received $2.1 billion in aid in the past 5 years. Where's the progress? Burkina Faso is still among the world's poorest nations. Ibrahim smiled unshaken. Mr. Patel, thank you for raising that. But first, let's correct a record. Burkina Faso didn't receive $2.1 billion in aid. We got $340 million in repayable loans, all on schedule. The camera caught Kash's flicker of surprise. Second, Ibrahim continued, we're not among the poorest anymore. In 3 years, we've climbed from 183rd to 156th on the UN Human Development Index. Tucker leaned forward. How did you manage that, Mr. President? Simple, Tucker. We focus on 3 pillars: education, healthcare, and infrastructure. We built 847 schools, 23 hospitals, and paved over 1,500 kilometers of roads. Kash jumped in, desperate. But you're still dependent on. Allow me to finish, Ibrahim said gently but firmly. Today, Burkina Faso exports gold, cotton, and agriculture to 34 countries. Our trade balance has stayed positive for 18 straight months. A heavy silence filled the Fox studio. Kash's talking points, built on outdated data, were falling apart. Tucker turned. Mr. Patel, how do you respond to those figures? Flustered, Kash tried to pivot. Numbers can be twisted. You came to power through a military coup. How do you justify that, President Traoré? Ibrahim had been waiting for this. Mr. Patel, you're right. I took office after a military intervention in 2022. But context matters. He looked directly into the camera. Our previous president had lost control of 70% of the country to terrorist groups. Soldiers died daily. Civilians were butchered. The economy collapsed. Kash opened his mouth, but Ibrahim pressed on. 3 months after I took office, we held a national referendum on my leadership. 89% of Burkinabes voted to keep me. The African Union and UN observed the process. Tucker asked, and what has changed since then? We reclaimed 85% of lost territory, cut terrorist attacks by 73%, and for the first time in 5 years, our children walk to school without fear. Running out of options, Kash resorted to personal jabs. You're only 35. How can you have enough experience to run a country? Ibrahim chuckled softly. Mr. Patel, how old were you when you became a White House aide? That's different. You were 34, Ibrahim cut in smoothly, and you'd never run anything. At 35, I'm already transforming a nation. A stunned hush swept through the studio. For once, Kash Patel was speechless. Kash Patel, famous for his fiery debating style, was being systematically dismantled by the young African president he had so confidently underestimated. There's something even more important I'd like to share tonight, Ibrahim said, a calm, almost mischievous smile spreading across his face. Tucker Carlson leaned forward, curiosity gleaming in his eyes. I have a little surprise for Mr. Patel. Kash narrowed his eyes. What surprise? You'll find out in just a moment, Ibrahim replied. His cryptic tone instantly gripped the American audience, who had no idea they were about to witness one of the most shocking moments in political television history. Ibrahim sat back in his chair, adjusting his notes. Mr. Patel, for 2 years you've built your entire brand around attacking American aid to Africa, haven't you? Yes, and I stand by it. It's a massive waste of the American taxpayers' money. Kash snapped, trying to regain the upper hand. Fascinating, Ibrahim said smoothly, because my team discovered something very interesting about your own businesses. Tucker looked over sharply. Mr. President, what exactly do you mean? Ibrahim gestured off camera. We conducted a thorough investigation. Mr. Patel, you're a partner in 3 companies that received lucrative U.S. government contracts for work in Africa, are you not? Kash's face drained of color. That's irrelevant. Irrelevant. Ibrahim chuckled softly. Let's name them. Patel Defense Consulting, Patel Strategic Solutions, and Patel International Holdings. All registered in Delaware. All received $47 million in Pentagon contracts for so-called African security consulting. Tucker's eyes darted to Kash. Is that true, Kash? I can explain. Ibrahim raised his hand, unbothered. But there's more. These companies never performed the services they were paid for. Instead, the money was funneled to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. A wave of panic rippled through the Fox News studio. Producers whispered frantically into earpieces. Tucker tried to steady the conversation. President Traoré, how do you have this information? It's quite simple, Tucker. If someone spends years attacking Africa, we have a duty to understand their motives. We found Mr. Patel's concern isn't about wasted American money. It's about his schemes being exposed. Kash slammed a hand on the desk. This is outrageous. It's defamation. I'll sue you for this. Ibrahim stayed perfectly calm. Mr. Patel, I have here documented evidence. Files from the FBI, IRS, and the Department of Justice. All public record. You've been under investigation for fraud for 8 months. The silence was suffocating. The man who had swaggered into the studio to humiliate a young African leader now sat pale, visibly shaken. That's the real reason you attack Africa, isn't it? Ibrahim continued, voice unwavering. Because you don't want the American people to know you stole money meant to help Africans. You exploited our struggles to line your pockets. Social media exploded. Within seconds, hashtag Patel Exposed and hashtag TraorTruth were trending worldwide. Tucker Carlson, ever the seasoned broadcaster, realized he was watching history unfold. Kash Patel wiped sweat from his brow, his hands trembling. President Traoré, you're making wild accusations. Wild. Ibrahim held up a thick folder. Here are 347 pages of evidence. Would you like me to read some? Tucker leaned in. Mr. President, please, can you share specifics? Gladly. Let's start with Contract DOD 20234471. Patel Defense Consulting was paid $12.3 million to train African security forces. No training was ever conducted. Instead, the entire sum was wired to a Zurich bank account within 48 hours. Kash pushed back his chair. I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. Sit down, Mr. Patel, Ibrahim said firmly, his tone cutting through the tension. I'm not finished. He flipped another page. Contract DOD 20235589. Patel Strategic Solutions was paid $18.7 million for security equipment that never existed. That money was funneled into a phantom account in Luxembourg. The studio was in chaos. Producers scrambled off camera. Lawyers were already being called. Tucker pressed on. Kash, do you deny these allegations? I need to talk to my legal team, Kash stammered, staring at the floor. Ibrahim leaned forward, voice clear and dignified. Mr. Patel, for years you've painted Africa as a cesspool of corruption, incompetent, dependent. But tonight, the corrupt one is you. He gestured toward the camera. You stole money that could have built schools, hospitals, roads. You profited off the very suffering you pretend to condemn. Kash suddenly lost control. I refuse to be lectured by an African dictator. Ibrahim's eyes narrowed, but his smile remained. Dictator? Mr. Patel, I was elected. You've never been elected to anything. I build schools. You build secret offshore accounts. So tell me, who is a real dictator here? Millions watching online were in disbelief. Tweets rolled in by the second. Kash Patel humiliated live. Traoré just taught the world how to expose corruption. This is Africa's moment. Tucker, sensing the magnitude of the moment, leaned closer. Mr. President, what do you hope happens next? Ibrahim looked directly into the lens, unflinching. I hope the American people see that integrity and corruption are not bound by borders. There are honest Africans and dishonest Americans. Corruption wears many flags. Kash Patel abruptly ripped off his mic, stood up, and stormed out of the studio. Tucker and millions of Americans sat in stunned silence as the broadcast went viral. Seconds later, the digital world ignited. Tucker regained his composure, clearing his throat. Well, that was unexpected. President Traoré, did you plan all of this? Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim sat tall, composed as ever. Tucker, when someone devotes years to tearing Africa down, we have every right to ask why. Tonight, the truth spoke for itself. Online, the hashtags hashtag Patel Exposed and hashtag TraorTruth stayed at #1 worldwide. Comments poured in. An African leader just made history. Total respect for this man. Corruption has no nationality. At the White House, President Trump watched from the residence. Wow, he muttered to his staff. He just buried Kash Patel on live TV. His chief of staff frowned. Sir, this could impact other contractors. Good, Trump shot back. I don't want crooks feeding off the government. Back at Fox News headquarters, the executives were reeling, but the ratings were the highest in the network's history. Tucker turned to the camera, exhaling slowly. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you saw the power of facts. This is journalism. We'll be right back. Calls from newsrooms around the world flooded into the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. Everyone wanted an interview with the African president who had exposed a multi-million-dollar corruption racket live on primetime American television. Mr. President, Musa Kabor said, holding up a stack of requests, the world can't stop talking about you. We've had 47 interview requests in the last 10 minutes alone. Ibrahim Traoré just smiled. We'll grant a few. But first, give me the American FBI. I have more evidence they'll want to see. The wild turnaround had only just begun. By dawn, the scandal dominated every major American headline. African president exposes military fraud live on air, blared the New York Times. Kash Patel flees studio after bombshell allegations, declared the Washington Post. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim woke up to his phone vibrating nonstop. On the other end was FBI Director Christopher Wray himself. President Traoré, we watched the debate last night. Will you cooperate with our investigation? Of course, Director Wray, Ibrahim said calmly. I have documents you'll find very useful. In Washington, Kash Patel had barricaded himself inside his Virginia apartment. His phone was off. His lawyers worked frantically as his reputation crumbled overnight. Federal agents were already combing through his company's bank records. In Congress, senators were outraged. Senator Chuck Schumer held a press conference on the Capitol steps. If these allegations prove true, this is outright treason against the American taxpayer. That night, Tucker Carlson returned to air. Last night, we witnessed one of the most jaw-dropping moments in television history. Tonight, the fallout continues. Official documents appeared on screen. The FBI has confirmed it's been investigating Kash Patel for 8 months. His company's accounts are now frozen. Connecting live from Ouagadougou, Ibrahim was asked, President, how did you even get this information? Tucker, when you lead a country under constant scrutiny, you develop good intelligence. We notice a pattern. The loudest critics of Africa usually hide secret business interests. We dug deeper and found the truth. He leaned forward, steady and unflinching. Kash Patel is not an exception. There's an entire industry of so-called experts who profit by portraying Africa as incompetent while siphoning off millions meant to help us. Across Africa, the reaction was electric. The president of Senegal tweeted, Ibrahim Traoré defended African dignity with calm and brilliance. A brother we're proud of. Nigeria's president declared, Burkina Faso just showed the world Africa will not be humiliated by corrupt men. Wall Street reeled. Stocks of defense contractors linked to Patel crashed overnight. Billions were wiped out as investors began scrutinizing other shady contracts. We do not want war with anyone, Ibrahim said to CNN. All we ask for is truth, respect, and honest partnerships. That's all. The world was listening and responding. A week later, the FBI's investigation intensified. Federal agents raided Patel's offices in Washington and Delaware, seizing computers, hard drives, and hidden accounts. At the palace, Dr. Awa Drogo updated as president. Sir, the FBI has confirmed your evidence exposed a $200 million fraud ring involving 15 shell companies. Ibrahim nodded. It's even bigger than we thought. Meanwhile, the White House went into crisis mode. President Trump slammed a fist on the table during an emergency meeting. I want every defense contract audited. If there's more dirt like Patel's, I want it uncovered now. His Secretary of Defense reported grimly, Mr. President, so far we found 23 suspicious contracts, many linked to so-called Africa experts. Trump scowled. These people were robbing us blind while acting like patriots. As for Kash Patel, it was over. He was arrested at dawn at his Virginia mansion. Footage of him being led away in handcuffs spread like wildfire. The man who tried to humiliate an African leader now stood exposed as the real fraud. The African continent felt vindicated. Ghana's president declared, "Ibrahim Traoré has shown we are not less than anyone. We can expose corruption better than they can." Back on Fox News, Tucker Carlson looked solemn. Kash Patel was arrested today on charges, including fraud, money laundering, and treason. It all began with one broadcast and one president who refused to back down. Again, connecting live from Ouagadougou, Ibrahim was asked, "Mr. President, how you feel knowing your revelations led to this arrest?" Ibrahim took a slow breath. Relieved, not out of revenge, but because justice was done. Money stolen from African projects will be returned to the American people. Patel didn't stand for American values. He stood for selfish greed. His impact reached far beyond one arrest. Prestigious universities like Harvard invited him to speak on leadership and intelligence. Harvard awarded him an honorary doctorate for transparency and global integrity. Truth has no borders, Ibrahim told graduates at his lecture. Corruption is not African or American. It is human, and it must always be confronted. 3 months after the explosive showdown, the world had changed. Ibrahim Traoré stood in New York before a packed UN General Assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "the Patel case taught us something fundamental. Corruption is global, but so is the truth." Representatives from 193 countries rose to their feet, applauding thunderously. The once unknown Burkinabe leader had become a symbol of accountability in a cynical world. "We did not attack America," Ibrahim said with quiet pride. "We helped America clean its own house. That is what true partners do." Kash Patel, meanwhile, was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His case triggered the unraveling of a vast fraud network that had siphoned off billions under the guise of foreign aid. Inside the White House, President Trump announced sweeping reforms. From now on, all military contracts must pass independent vetting. No more secret deals. This young African president taught us more about national security in 15 minutes than our own experts did in years. The effects rippled home, too. In Burkina Faso, $8 billion in foreign investment poured in. Serious companies, inspired by Ibrahim's integrity, lined up to partner with his government. One evening, as he tucked his daughter into bed, she asked, "Daddy, are you famous now?" Ibrahim laughed softly. "No, my dear. I just showed the world that Africans can find the truth too and expose lies when they must." The transformation went beyond politics. Hollywood announced a major film, Traoré vs. Patel, The Truth Exposed, directed by Spike Lee with a $150 million budget. Across Africa, a new generation was inspired. Young people flocked to courses in investigative journalism and intelligence, determined to follow in Ibrahim's footsteps. His legacy was clear. Ibrahim Traoré hadn't just humiliated a corrupt pundit. He had sparked a revolution in global accountability. He proved Africa could lead the world in exposing corruption. The child soldier turned president had changed geopolitics and given a continent its dignity back. This was only the beginning of a new era, one where Africa spoke for itself without fear and the world listened.